Hey folks, we've been getting many calls from people who are losing their houses because they can't sleep at night. They saw a post we had done, and in the normal course of going through records, I came upon a case which pretty much shocked me, and it would shock anyone. So I'd like to talk about it because on the screen, okay, is Ezra Priest. If anybody knows Ezra, he's a gentleman. He died 2 days after his COVID. I just highlighted this girl, Lizette, who's his girlfriend, okay? And there's some racial tension there, obviously. She's white, he's black, but none between their friends. And what we need to talk about right here is a judicial court case search, which we did. And here we go. This is Ezra Priest. He's disabled mute from Norwalk. He grew up in Washington Village, and 6 of his sisters got cancer from stone crushing, and he was the only one in the family without cancer, but he had a stroke. So he became mute. He was a veteran at Camp Lejeune, which had numerous environmental problems, and then he went to live across the street from LaJoy's that stone crushes. So LaJoy's leases a lot to a stone crusher without a permit. They crush cement in the 140. The neighborhood that surrounds Meadow and Woodward has 285 people with cancer and other things, including COPD, respiratory ailments, chronic nosebleeds, lymph node cancer. Terry Joyner just died of lymph node cancer. She's at 29 Quintard. 25 Quintard has, she's 25 Quintard. 29 Quintard has 2 people with asthma. 31 Quintard has a butcher with asthma. There are 13 people with asthma within 6 houses. Ann Van Dyne has asthma. The 2-year-old next door has asthma. So there's quite a bit of asthma in the stone crushing district of Norwalk, but the story is about Ezra in the screen here. Ezra had a run-in with a police officer 20 years ago. The police officer held a grudge. So they targeted Ezra because what happened, if you look at the case detail of his eviction, this is it. Here's the complaint. The complaint is none other by Judge Spader. Okay? Judge Spader heard this case. The problem is he's a police commissioner. Okay? Now, 4 cops worked Ezra over at 12 o'clock on May 1st, 2018. May 1st, 2018. Cedar Court Housing. Okay? Actually, no, that's when he signed the lease. When he got evicted, look at the explanation. Breach of lease. Defendant concurrently has unauthorized occupants Iris Williams, John Doe 1, John Doe 2, John Doe 3, Jane Doe 1, Jane Doe 2, Jane Doe 3. This is a tiny apartment with 1 bedroom. There's no furniture. I donated the furniture, actually. So he had a chair, a desk, a TV, and a bed. There was no place for anyone to stay. And truthfully, he has a niece with a terrible disease, and she's not even mentioned here. But he does have numerous sisters, of which 1 lived in Washington Village, 2 lived in across the street from stone crushing LaJoy's. But here it is. He had a Section 8 disabled veteran income living on Social Security. And as you can see, the eviction mentions that he had 6 John and Jane Does living with him, which is certainly not true because I've been there many times. He used to call me for a ride, and and I would give it to him because he couldn't walk. News Channel 12 donated him a scooter. I built him a shed to keep the scooter in so he could charge it. And it's a long story, folks, but he's a truly humble gentleman. He's the subject of about 6 or 8 News Channel 12 videos where he's very thankful to Blumenthal and others for arranging his Section 8 and his veterans benefits. As I described, he is deaf and mute and had a stroke. But if you look at the details of this case, let me tell you what actually happened, and then you decide. Who's the criminal? Okay. So we hear one night from Lizette, his girlfriend, who's white, who has MS, who lives in a wheelchair, who's currently got a new apartment, but when she was at Cedar Court, Ezra was in K1 and she was in A1. So A1 is on the back of Cedar Street, and K1 is near the Lowe's shopping center. So what I'm here to report is that at 11:15 one night, knock, knock, knock came to Ezra's door, and he opened it. He never should have opened it because there were 2 informants, Ron and Nichol, who forced their way into his apartment carrying drugs. Okay? Now, the owner of Cedar Court is Arthur Greenblatt. Arthur Greenblatt is a notorious gangster who owns 20,000 apartments. Now, when he bought Cedar Court, it was a school. He got a grant for $15 million to build Cedar Court, which is 98 apartments. Cedar Court has rats. Lizette Timke suffered from 2 transfusions from bed bugs. There's a retired cop named Ron who lives there who had a heart transplant who has bed bugs also, and so does Robert, who is a Spanish guy who is retired, disabled. They're all disabled. See, the retired cop had a heart transplant and living on a pension couldn't live. So what happens is he's currently being evicted. Why? I'll tell you why. Because he threw out his mattress with bed bugs and took his new mattress out of the rent, which is in the lease. If your apartment is infested with bed bugs, you have the right to throw out your mattress and buy a new mattress, removing it from the current rent that's due. So these guys pay $1,179 a month, and they get $330 in food stamps monthly. And this is how Social Security and benefits for pensions of cops work. This is how it works. They dedicate 20, 30 years service to the city, and in return, they get a voucher from the HUD, and in this case, Norwalk owns 1/3 of the HUD property, Arthur Greenblatt owns 1/3, and the city of Norwalk owns 1/3. So what happens then is, knock, knock, knock on Ezra's door at 11:45 p.m. Ron and Nichol force their way in. They're confidential informants. They're carrying drugs, and they plant drugs in his apartment. Okay, so he forces them out at 12 o'clock. Then, knock, bang, 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 the door comes off the hinges. 4 cops come flying in, destroy his furniture, because I cleaned it up myself, shattered the tables, shattered the personal effects. They robbed him of his phone, his keys, his medical card, his ID, everything. They took everything. He's never gotten his wallet back. I went to the police department myself personally 5 times to try to get it back. Excuse me. The state's disabled advocate got a letter from the judge instructing the police department of Norwalk to return EZRA Priest his wallet, his phone, his medical card, his veterans card, his ID, and they refused. They still, after 2020, have it in their possession. So they refused it to me. They refused it to Elizabeth Greenwood, who's friends with Ezra Priest. Elizabeth Greenwood is friends with Lizette, the girlfriend of Ezra Priest. And the story gets worse from there. They worked him over. He had 2 heart attacks. They evicted him not for having a John Doe. So that police report is false. And when Ezra was arrested, they said they had 2 warrants for his arrest. I went to the prosecutor's office at the Stamford Superior Court. There's no warrant for anyone's arrest, okay? They lied. So, when confronted by me that Ezra had no warrant for his arrest and that Ron and Nichol planted the drugs, knock, 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 at 12 o'clock, 4 cops came bursting through. Blake, Resnick, Holmes, and one other, who shall remain nameless, because he has admitted his wrongdoing and claims he will never do it again. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Now the problem is, who was in charge of the bust? Well, an honest cop. So the fact that Ron and Nichol were sent as informants to plant drugs on a disabled veteran is alarming. What else is alarming? Judge Spader, who's a police commissioner, heard the case, evicted Ezra on false charges that they arranged. For who? Arthur Greenblatt, the owner of the HUD Property. What happened? Arthur got a loan from Jim Himes to buy a school, renovate, turn it into 98 apartments. Okay, HUD Property. All good, we need cheap housing. However, this isn't cheap housing. When you have bed bugs like Lizette did, that caused her to have 2 transfusions, they were sleeping in her mattress, sucking the blood out of her at night, and it almost killed her. So she eventually transferred out. Okay, she has a new apartment that she loves. However, she fell getting out of bed, broke her femur. She's 11 weeks in the hospital now. I posted her picture yesterday. She's an angel. She's the nicest lady in Norwalk. She's a volunteer. She is a real go-getter. She helps Blumenthal with disabled advocacy, along with Elizabeth Greenwood, who happens to have dinner with me every Sunday night for years and years. We were childhood friends. I worked for her father, who ran a hedge fund called McMahon Securities for many years. He hired me out of college. I worked with him for 13 years. I managed about $7 million, and we made about 100% annually on just my portfolio, which is not unheard of. We were a market maker and convertible arbitrage trader, and that's how I got my start in the industry. I worked on the American Stock Exchange in college. I did hand signals down from the booth to the floor. And this, by the way, is the bull. And this, on the other end, is the shit. So what I'm telling you is bullshit, okay? Judge Spader has an completely falsified eviction that was done because drugs were found in his apartment that were planted. Now, the interesting part about it is Ron and Nichol were confronted by me, the informants. And when the cops found out, they sprung Ezra based on false arrest. I said, this is false arrest. Why? He doesn't own the drugs. Ron and Nichol own the drugs, and they were sent there by Resnick, Holmes, and who's the third guy? Resnick, Holmes, and Blake. So there were complaints about drugs being sold at Cedar Court. So what happened? The owner, whose name is Arthur Greenblatt, okay, he starts boasting that he bought judges, Spader, and bought politicians, Bob Duff. Hello, He bought Bob Duff, and guess what? He bought others. So when you look at the New Haven problem, he bought Rosa DeLauro. Yes, he did. I believe so. Judging from the people coming forward telling me stories about A, what happened at Washington Village, a Holmes project. What happened at Washington Village? Well, 30 people were poisoned with human fecal matter, PCBs, VOCs, natural gas leak for a year, okay, mold. Oh, by the way, there's mold at Cedar Court. I've cleaned it many times. It comes up from the vents. There's rats. I have photographs. Now, what's interesting is there's a letter from Bob Duff and Travis Sims about the rats and the mold and all the problems, except that, gee, they've never gotten back to any of the residents about it at all. And Travis Sims said to me I was a liar, that there were no rats. Dude, I have the pictures. I gave them to the HUD. Hello. I blew the whistle on Holmes at Washington Village for Lucy, who died, who weighed 550 pounds. She was the last person to leave Washington Village, and by HUD guidelines, high-risk patients are supposed to be the first to leave. Do you know they took her out of the window with a crane? Oh. Do you know who the other people at Washington Village were? Well, one was EZRA Priest's sister. Yes, and her niece has medical problems. Michelle has medical problems. Mary is on oxygen. The two Spanish ladies who lived at the corner used to call me all the time. And you know what the most amazing thing about one of the patients at Washington Village is? It's Travis Sims in the 140's aunt, Aunt Helen. Aunt Helen fell in the tub. And did she call Travis Sims? No. She called Johnny Flynn. Johnny, please come and get me. I've fallen in the tub. Please carry me out of the tub. You know what? Helen is the classiest lady that there is. And you know what she says? She says Travis Sims is only out for Travis Sims. And I believe that. He's my state rep. So when I read his letter with Bob Duff to Arthur Greenblatt, mentioning that there's rats and bed bugs in the apartments, excuse me, I carried Lizette out to the hospital for 2 transfusions from bed bugs, and I carried a gallon of bugs from her mattress. A gallon. So, what I'm here to tell you is, now that I find out that Judge Spader was in charge of the EZRA Priest problem, let's go back to the EZRA Priest picture. Okay, where is it? Here it is. EZRA Priest was the humblest, nicest man at Cedar Court. To find out that he was evicted due to having drugs planted in his apartment, and now today, finally reading the court document, which is right here, that he was accused of having 6 John Does in his apartment? I donated the furniture. No. Breach of the lease? This is completely false. I'm here to tell you. EZRA Priest, and this is his girlfriend, Lizette Timke, okay, the subject of the bedbug complaint, to Bob Duff, never answered. Imagine getting a letter to your state senator that you're in the hospital getting a transfusion, forced to go back to Cedar Court, owned by the city of Norwalk. What I'm here to say in my final moment here, which is alarming, if you read the Vesta lawsuit versus Arthur Greenblatt and the counterclaim of Harry Rilling to Arthur Greenblatt, they both accuse each other in paragraph 17 of committing multiple heinous, the most unethical, unconscionable law violations that are supposed to be reported to the HUD in the first place. Now, to later find out that Harry Rilling settled for $1.2 million with Vesta, and Vesta turned around and gave Harry Rilling a campaign contribution, well, that means that Arthur Greenblatt bought Judge Spader and Mayor Rilling, and when he boasted that he had bought politicians and mayors and judges, one should be alarmed. So I heard a rumor today that there is a special investigation into Walter Spader and that he should soon be arrested. Well, I'll give you a week, and then I'll go get him myself, and damn the torpedoes. They've arrested me before, falsely, numerous times, and actually boasted. Right now, Darien is saying to Norwalk that I, John Flynn, running for U.S. Senate in Connecticut, in 2005 or in 2008 and 9, when I was complaining to Jim Himes about money laundering, that I was a domestic terrorist against Bank America, his largest donor. Well, we had 1,239 cash stolen checks. We went to the city of Norwalk, and Harry Rilling has a file telling the Norwalk Police Department not to investigate the check fraud. Now, the chief of police is on the fire tree board where Bob Duff gets campaign contributions from Robinson and Cole, and Fire Tree is opening prisons in Norwalk. They have one on Bartlett and one on Quintard that are releasing prisoners. And yesterday, while in front of Fire Tree, a van pulled up with what I believe is another inmate, and I called the police chief of Norwalk and left a message saying, I am in front of Fire Tree. There seems to be a new inmate here from the Bureau of Prisons, which Fire Tree does not have a permit to operate prison release. No, it doesn't. It has a rehab permit, so they say, to a third party that Bob Duff approved to get campaign contributions. So when you talk about the amount of corruption just on my street, now there's another development. There's a young kid who just turned 21 who's been stealing cars, breaking into homes, and the cops won't arrest him because he's 21. Well, I'm here to tell you, he has a skipped felony marijuana possession from years ago, a felony, and Norwalk doesn't want to arrest him because, why? They said they don't want to babysit the kid. Okay, now the risk here is great. The risk here is far worse than you know. I happen to know. I just boarded up the house myself. You can drive by it. You can check it out. The fact remains, the foundation has been compromised because someone jacked the house up, separating the supports on every level all the way up to the chimney. Anyone who goes in that house is high risk. It's high risk, and the zoning and the fire department tagged it for no construction, no trespassing, no anything. You cannot go into that house, folks. It's next to Fire Tree. Now, the other side of Fire Tree, Jimmy Lewis, was recently found murdered in his car. So, I found multiple crack pipes on Quintard that came from Fire Tree. And what happened? The police refused to document it. So the police are refusing to arrest someone criminal trespassing who was at the psychiatric ward of Norwalk Hospital, which 10 beds were closed, and Fire Tree at 17 Quintard has an entire psych ward built on the middle level where the exterior fire escapes are located if you drive by the house. So, we filed a capious writ against Bob Duff for approving a prison in a residential community without permits while taking campaign contributions. Look at the list of his campaign contributions. I'm at 25 minutes. I just wanted to talk about Ezra Priest, who died 6 days after his COVID shot, which is a crying shame. I'm sure those 4 cops are absolutely delighted. But to plant drugs in a disabled veteran's house to evict him at the bequest of Arthur Greenblatt, who gave them cash, I am told. You can now wonder, officially, who will be arrested from planting drugs on a disabled veteran who's friends with Richard Blumenthal, my opponent in the U.S. Senate race. We're mutual friends of Ezra Priest, as it turns out. Why? Because we referred him to Richard as a veteran to help have the senator get his benefits after being shaken down by 4 illegal cops who had no probable cause and a 20-year vendetta, who basically want forgiveness, I am told. And, between you and me, Ezra passed away due to the heart attacks that you guys gave him. So it's hard to say what your involvement is, and you can talk about backing the blue in Connecticut, which certain police departments, deserve the undivided backing of the blue, but woe be to you planting drugs to falsely evict a veteran because Arthur Greenblatt, who's claiming to be buying politician, police, and judges, bought Blake, Resnick, Holmes, Spader, and the mayor of Norwalk, Harry Rilling. Remarkably, I got another call from another person with another nightmare today, named William. I hope he's man enough. I think he is. He wants to tell his story. He wants us to cover it so that we get Pritchard, his affidavit. By the way, I have Ezra Priest's affidavit. Now you should worry because he's dead. Because his testimony to me is no longer hearsay. He died. He told me, he gave me a letter. His girlfriend would give me a letter. The fact remains, okay? I don't want to cause a lot of disruption, but we can't have judges taking bribes and having state senators taking bribes to fix evictions on disabled mute veterans who happen to be friends of mine. I volunteered every time he called. I moved him twice. We got him housing. We got him benefits through the state disabled advocates. He had a girlfriend. She's an angel. She deserves my protection. I'm telling you now, folks. I am telling you now. I am wearing gloves. You can't see them. When the gloves come off, you won't see it coming? No, you won't. Because I'm not stupid, and I've got friends. Many, and many are SEAL Team 6 members. And actually, I am telling you right now, the people threatening the people I'm learning about, you got something to worry about. Because I will arrest you. I'm ready to arrest Judge Spader myself. I'll give him one more week. What's today? 12:30. Happy New Year. You got till the 6th of January, the Feast of the Epiphany. What's the Epiphany? The January 6th event in Norwalk is going to be gigantic. Why? Why? I'm not telling you why. Have fun, folks. Now you can wonder who I know and who's in law enforcement that I know that you don't know. Because I know all honorable, stand-up guys, ethical guys. And the FBI in New Haven is saying, they got my back now. Wow, that's amazing. Arrest Judge Spader and I'll believe you. I'll give you 6 days. Have a great day. So we're going to talk some more. This is 30 minutes about EZRA Priest, who got arrested due to a falsified warrant, got sprung, got beat up, had 2 heart attacks, got evicted, and Blumenthal got him a new apartment in Bridgeport. Now he's protected by Carmine, who's a made man who owns apartments in Norwalk, who the cops will never confront. So the safety we provided to EZRA wasn't very long-lived, and unfortunately EZRA died. God rest in peace, my brother, and I'll be watching out for your girl, Lizette, who's a complete angel. And anyone who goes near Lizette will have myself and Richard Blumenthal to deal with, and together I'm sure we can work on that common goal. We have many things we're working on together, folks. You have no idea. And the fact remains, EZRA should not have died in vain. Have a great day.